So thank you for joining tonight. We know the job market is very tough, and that's why I think it's very valuable to know what is the real client project and how it's help you to land a job. Before doing that, and actually we're gonna quickly go through what like a data scientist bootcamp and what is the real client project and what's the importance of the client project. And there will be some project examples. And first of all, we have two speaker panelists. We have Alex from Big Data as a project manager, and also we have Ricardo as manager from Big Data as well. Let me just do a quick introduction to the data scientist bootcamp. So we have a full-time data scientist bootcamp start out from May 27th. It's a Monday to Friday, and from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. like a morning for the lecture, and in the afternoon it's from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. for the lab. We also have part-time schedule for July. We didn't finalize the date. It will be 2 lectures a week. Most time will be every Tuesday, Thursday from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. So the main difference is for the full time, it's only 3 months, which means if you want to learn job fast, and also you are not maybe you are just new grads and you are looking for the career switch, and you can just join for this 3 months short course, like a short period of a course, to get knowledge with SQL, Python, skills for data scientists, machine learning, and big data. There will be some portfolio projects for you to complete during the bootcamp. And after you graduate, you will go into the real client projects, which we will introduce shortly. And meanwhile, you will receive one-on-one mentorship. On the other hand, the part-time will be very similar. It's only the schedule. So you will still receive knowledge with SQL, Python, data scientist skills, machine learning skills, and big data. The difference will be 6 months and 2 lectures per week. And there other different will be is optional to join the real client projects, but you still receive one mentorship. Okay, so let me go backward and let me let our panelists to do a self-introductions.
Hi, I got the opportunity to at least query a couple of you as to where you lived before we started the presentation. My name is Alex, and along with Ricardo, we are project managers. I think if you both look at our LinkedIn page, I think we're both trying to do our best blue steel. If you guys can just suggest like which one is better, that would be great. But actually, it's funny. I might have in some ways a very similar background to many of you, and in many ways a different one. Similar probably in the extent that I am, and you might be a career switcher. But I was sort of enamored with what was going on with well, just harnessing the power of data in terms of predictive analytics and how influential it was becoming, and the extent to which data seemed like currency, and I guess to some extent it is. So that actually drew me into the data science bootcamp, having largely had a background that had nothing to do with data science or the STEM background for that matter. My background was actually in political science and history at the University of Toronto. And again, ultimately, I was drawn in by by data science. And then particularly WeCloud, because I like to think I did my research. And ultimately, I went through the boot camp, completed the real client projects, and was fortunate enough to stay on at Beam Data and become a project manager, which is what brings me here today.
All right, thank you, Alex. Well, my name is Ricardo, and I'll say that also my journey to data was not direct. My bachelor is like civil engineer, and I did have a bit of experience as project manager, but not on the data world. And just by luck, I was hired by a marketing agency, and that's where I was more as a data analyst, but it was just like the initial stuff where I start, getting that exposure to data itself. And then is when I decided that my technical skills were not enough. And that's where also I choose WeCloudData because uh, I like the program. I like what they say about the bootcamp that is that I'm gonna learn all the skills that I needed. And I also spoke with a lot of ex-alumni that told me a lot of good stuff about the about the bootcamp and everything. So that's how I decided to move to the data world, and then I become project manager with Ping Data. So that's it.
Great. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Ricardo. And again, so this is a introduction to the real-time projects, and also understand how it help you to land a job. If you have any questions during these sessions, and feel free either unmute yourself or post your question in the chat, and we will ask our project manager to address this. And let me hand over to Alex to explain what is the real-time project.
Thanks, Adam. So the real client projects, having gone through, I would say the Beam experience of going through the boot camp for data science and then engaging in real client projects and coming to that determination to take the WeCloudData data science bootcamp in very large part came down to the fact that they offered these real client projects. Of course, I thought the curriculum, as far as I was concerned, seemed and I think was superior to most boot camps, but it was really the opportunity to solve that catch-22 at the end of the day that cemented my decision to be a part of the boot camp and then ultimately the real client projects. That catch-22 being ultimately at the end of the day, after being educated, you want to find a job, but you'll often find that you need experience to land a job. But you need experience to land a job, but you need a job to get experience. So that was the catch-22, and I thought that the real client projects offered again a solution to that problem. In that once, for my part anyway, once I completed the boot camp, then I'd be introduced to those real client projects and the opportunities to work in the, as they say, in the real world, tackling real projects that would be that I could show off, that I could put on my resume, and that were legitimate, while giving me the sort of but wetting my feet really in that professional context and seeing how things would operate and the workflows and the interactions and the deadlines that that ultimately comprise the real client projects. So then what are the real client projects? Well, they're real projects that you'll have the opportunity to work on. And if you see the slide here, there's basically two distinctions that go on with the real client projects. One, if you're looking at the Beam data side, and then there's the client side. So for the Beam data side, these are projects internal but pivotal to Beam itself. And for those projects, you will ultimately interact through and with a project manager like myself or Ricardo. And then you will be a part of a team consisting of other data science consultants. And that's what I should say also, sorry, let me back that up. So for the real client projects, And we'll get into the resumes very shortly, but for the real client projects, once you undertake that, you are now officially recognized as in this case, a data science consultant who is working on projects. And those projects are distinguished into two groups. There's the Beam data projects that are internal and pivotal to Beam data. The structure of those projects, you'll have a project manager, and then a team of consultants that you will work together with to achieve an end objective over a certain period of time. And then we sort of distinguish that from client projects. And in client projects, we are actually working with a third-party entity outside of Beam Data and pursuing objectives that they have defined. So in many cases, you will be interacting with the project owners. There will be a project lead who will sort of hierarchically manage the project or an interface with the project owner. And then there will be a team underneath the project lead, again, consisting of either engineers, data scientists, sometimes both, and the various disciplines depending on the nature of the project. The teams themselves will vary, again, depending on the nature of the projects. And I just want to say one thing about this, the distinction between them, because I said we sort of make distinctions. They are different in the sense that I think the Beam data projects can be more forgiving in that they're internal to Beam, and we it's not as consequential if we run up against a deadline that we don't meet. So to that extent, there may be a little bit less pressure involved in those projects. The client projects, we are often running up on deadlines that we are very much striving to meet. The client very much depends on us meeting. So to that extent, there might be more pressure with respect to those positions. However, the quality of the projects themselves, I wouldn't make a distinction between. Having led both Beam data projects and client projects, I could say that there are definite projects from the Beam data side that people would prefer over the client projects because for a variety of reasons. Some of them just happen to be more interesting and some of them happen to be more involved. But often case with those projects, you will also get an opportunity to go end to end to see the start and the completion of the project. Whereas in the client projects, we are working on little bits or phases of a particular project. So you might come into those client projects and just work on a particular section, and then we will proceed to the next one. So never really having the opportunity to sort of see the project to its ultimate end. And again, for all intents and purposes, these distinctions make no difference on job prospects and insofar as your resume is concerned. So if we can just, sorry, can you switch to, Ricardo, do you have the slides? Can you switch to the next one? Okay, so what happens with the real client project? Well, one, there's the registration. That will include the certain agreements, NDAs in particular, given that we are working with, in many instances, clients' data that can be sensitive. So to that extent, there'll be NDAs and acknowledgements in your registration. Each person who does register for the real client project will undergo a qualification assessment, which, depending on your particular field, will be a combination of technical skills that involve SQL, Python coding, and particularly for the data science projects, machine learning. After that, we will take in the results of that assessment, provide project training via a project management handbook that will familiarize you with what to expect and the expectations that we might have of you in those projects. And then we will proceed to onboarding. So with that, we will provide you with additional materials. Those additional materials will probably be more specific to the project, that based on your qualification assessment, we've determined that where you would best flourish in what position and what project. So to that extent, we would be giving you the project assign, the onboarding material. And of course, in addition to the opportunity to work on the projects themselves, we provide career support. So once you complete the client projects, then I assume you will obviously look for a job in the field. And for that, we will provide you with career support, which means each of you will be assigned a mentor. You go through a process of mock interviews. Your resume will be looked through. Feedback will be given, as well as just general information, because largely these mentors are people who are and have been working in the data science space for quite some time. So to that extent, you could always pick their brain, and they could give you a lay of the land to see what's working, what are they looking for, and what gaps that you might have to fill in order to make yourself as strong a candidate as possible. And
Sorry,
then
Alex, sorry for interrupting, Alex, but I just wanted to talk a bit more about the mentor because it really helped me a lot. Because I think for the real client project, I think it's like clear that having experience is good for you, but the mentorship, maybe that's an overused word, and in other places it's not like that clear. But for mentorship, in my case, it really helped me a lot. The mentor that I got was someone who worked at the IBM, so they were great. They had all the technical skills that you could wish for someone who could help you. So the mentor, and he helped me a lot of preparing for interviews, being, I would say, focused on what it was important and not like to overstudy or try to do everything. He tried to help me a lot, and I really appreciate his help. So just for mentorship is important. Also, I would say, like, when you are trying to find a job, it's really hard to keep your goal on mind all every day, right? Because it's not like sometimes you don't get feedback, you send a lot of resumes, you don't get feedback, you don't know what to do. But the mentor helps you to stay calm, to keep doing what you need to do to go to get those interviews, and when you get those interviews, to be prepared for those interviews. So it really helps a lot. I just want to emphasize about that. Like, it's really important to have someone on your corner who keeps you motivated, and so you can keep going. That's more or less what the mentorship will do. Sorry.
yeah, no problem. And then you will obviously send out your resumes, and then you can list certainly the project managers and people at Beam Data as a reference check. And then if when all goes well, well, then you'll be hired. So if we go to the next slide, we can see, and as sort of I alluded to earlier, it's it's really tough for, I think, junior talent to get a position, largely because they lack the experience and the things to put down on your resume. So enter the client projects that will ultimately assist you in filling out that very key aspect called experience. We'll get into resume structure a little bit more, but if we want to just go to the next slide, Ricardo. Yeah, these are ultimately things that, sorry, I should just back that up. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I want to just sort of talk on the key aspects of the real client projects. But like in addition to having it fill out that experience on your resume, the other benefit, I think, tremendous benefit, is actually the real client projects are a place to gain confidence. I don't know how everybody is, so I'll speak for myself, but coming out of the data science boot camp, I guess, and I don't think I was alone by any means, but you sort of have that imposter syndrome, and you also don't know what to expect, or at least I didn't. So to that extent, the working on 2 projects, and one of which I'll detail a little later on, really gave me the opportunity to sort of get my feet wet, and build a tremendous bit of confidence. And I'll just sort of I'll relay my own experience right now. But again, coming out of the data science bootcamp, I remember there was this. We have these projects that we outline, or that are outlined to the students, and these are the real client projects. And one of them involved working with a major media publisher, and I just remember going, no, I don't want any part of that, because at the time I just thought it was so far beyond my skill set, and you know, I didn't have enough, I guess, confidence to really move forward authoritatively, and then let alone like for interviews and stuff like that. But ultimately, I took the first client project, and then sort of again got my feet wet, and built some more confidence. And funnily enough, by the second client project, I took a project manager from Beam had asked me if I wanted to be a part of the project. The initial one, like, or I didn't want to have anything to do with it. But again, by that time, I was feeling pretty good about my efforts. I took it, and it was ultimately a great, worthwhile project. I'm glad I did it. It wasn't as far removed from my skill set as maybe I imagined. And long story short, actually, I'm managing projects now for that client, that major media publisher. But in any event, I think these are some of the intangible efforts, because ultimately, the intangible benefits of having the real client projects under you, right? So again, you have the experience, sure. That experience that you put down is pivotal, because hiring managers, well, that's a lot about what they are looking for. But to that extent, also, you can gain confidence within that project, within those projects, and that confidence can certainly propel you in just, psychologically, in your everyday life, in terms of like having an idea and grasp of what it means to work on these projects, but also that can ultimately be reflected in the interview process, which in and of itself is extremely important, in terms of like what you are projecting and speaking as if you are a data science professional, because by that time, you should be and will be, and they're expecting you to be. Sorry, do you want to next slide, Ricardo? So yeah, this is just the if you play out the rest of the slide there, you can see just the difference between working on the real client projects and not. The ultimate difference being that filling out that experience column. And just there you go with projects. We'll go next slide. So in the end, it should offer you the opportunity for, as you can see, more interviews, more offers, a higher starting salary, and the opportunity to advance within the company quicker. As I mentioned, you become a confident professional in this field. I can't overstate that. That reads the minute you walk into the room, and I've had the opportunity to interview and potential applicants, and you can just see it the moment, in this case, the moment they appear on camera. So the job market being what it is, I don't want to put it in sort of dire terms, but I think this is some level of experience, particularly today, is an absolute necessity. Again, based on what hiring managers are looking for, but also in the intangible ways in which you present yourself, in terms of gaining greater confidence. So there's a question Mario is asking, what about official certifications like Azure, GCP, Docker? I would say, and as was said to me, I think ultimately certifications are great, but it depends on where these certifications are coming from. Some certifications are, let's just say, easier to obtain than others. And if they are, well, they don't mean as much. And I certainly don't think they mean as much as experience. But if I was to get certified in anything, I would probably think about getting certified in AWS and working my way through their certification program, largely because, well, we just see the continued trend of big data. So to that extent, and we'll see shortly on the project, companies want to manage and leverage greater and greater amounts of data. Things like AWS, Azure, GCP will, provide assurances to those companies that you do absolutely have some familiarity in managing those services. The only reason I'd go AWS is I probably see it much more, and I believe the stats on that is it's still the most used of the three. So that's what I would do. I think we can go to the next slide, and yeah, just some of the things. Again, the projects vary, so you will learn a great many skills and diverse skills depending on what project you're involved in. But it ranges anywhere from data wrangling, web scraping, dashboard building, dashboard building, recommender systems, time series forecasting, NLP pipelines, computer vision. In fact, I've managed projects, I think, for all of those. And obviously, I think sort of overstating it, but it does accelerate the learning. Great positive on your resume. And you obviously distinguish it from personal projects, right? Not bad to have personal projects. It's just even better to have real client projects. And Mary is from Peru. Hi. Does anybody have any questions about the real client projects before moving on? Oh, Bree, hold on. Sorry, I'm just seeing a couple of questions. How to attract a couple of questions. So, how to attract clients in other parts of the world? I'm not clients. How do you mean attract them, or be attractive to clients? Yes. Okay. So Mario's from Peru. So was the question sort of how can I showcase myself to clients who are not in Peru? Or to prospective employees, sorry. If that is the question, what we're seeing here is at Beam Data we're typically pulling job data on a daily basis, and one of the features that we are extracting is where those jobs are offered. And I think still if we just took the remote category as its own location, it is still by far the most offered job. So I think that's good news, depending on where you live, in that it offers that degree of flexibility. So maybe you are in Peru and the opportunity is remote, such that you can continue living in Peru. Bree has 2 AWS certifications, 12 projects, and GitHub, but still struggling to find an internship. Yeah, that's interesting. The 12 projects, are these projects self-initiated in terms of their personal? Okay, yeah, you posted them on Medium. I'd say that the 2 AWS certifications are valuable. The 12 projects, while again are valuable in and of themselves, won't be regarded on the same plane as like real professional experience. And then it also might come down to a lot of things. One of which is how your resume is being presented. So a lot of things go into it, and maybe after, we can go and maybe do a quick look on at your resume. So Session is asking, do we accept trainee consultants? Yeah, those are largely our consultants. Again, they are coming in as career switchers. They will be trained to a certain extent. But at this point, for the real client projects, we are expecting some background or familiarity with things like machine learning, things like Python, and things like SQL. The familiarity should be strong enough to pass the qualification assessment that we provide. So to that extent, for your part, you don't necessarily have to worry about whatever Python certification you do or don't have, whatever machine learning certification you do or don't have. But insofar as you have a familiarity with it through Udemy, through a more professional setting, through just your own self-initiated learning, insofar as you have that familiarity, can apply that to a qualification test, then you're good to go.
Yeah, Alex, I just wanted to add to Bright, Rory. I know because she seems like she already is super prepared. So I'm just going to say we are going to show two real client projects on the presentation, but then we can talk about we have several I would say, well, I don't know if I can call them recommendation, but things I had seen with other students and has work or at least had work on getting more interviews. So I'm gonna share that with you at the end of these two, after the two projects that we want to show.
Well, yeah, and actually on the topic of resumes, if you want to just flip over to the next slide, Ricardo. You can see the data science resume, because ideally you will want to structure your resume in this manner. Obviously, you'll have a contact header with your name and information. The key skills should follow. This is actually a crucial thing. I was looking at one of our data consultants' resumes today, actually, and I was shocked to see that he didn't have a key skills section. So this is going to be very important, largely because if you take a look at the job postings, you can see that they are asking for these particular skills. And insofar as you can make a hiring manager's job easier, and by easier, that they don't have to necessarily go scanning your resume to see if you have the skills that they have posted, and that you could present it in an identifiable spot and they could find it quickly. You have to do that, because the minute they have to go searching is the minute they'll flip over your resume and say next. But you want to follow your key skills, and again, key skills you will have practiced and developed and cultivated within the real client projects. You'll want to then list the relevant experience. As always, with relevant experience, I think I just sort of want to touch on this point because I don't know that it's readily. I don't know that everybody does it, but everybody should. And I think the tendency sometimes within the data space is to get all technical about these things, in terms of your experience. And to some extent, yeah, you want to show off your technical prowess and what you've engaged with. But probably more importantly than that is, what did you do on that project to move the dial? What was your impact? And that impact should be related to business objectives, right? So it's like, I worked on this, that and doing so, that time series forecasting prediction ultimately say on inventory save the company 15%. Or something like that, that speaks to results, it speaks to impact, says you can move the dial along for them. And I always sort of simplify it to two things. If you're going to do one of two things or both, right? It's either how much you're making the company, how much you're saving the company, or doing both, saving and making. And then after your relevant experience, then you want to list those projects that are self-initiated. And then finally, we sort of generally always conclude with education and a degree, certificate, boot camp. Sorry, it's is asking, is too much resume formatting, indentation an issue with ATS though? Depends what you mean by too much indentation formatting. But I also had this, depends how you are presenting your resume too. I personally think style matters a lot, largely because largely because you make assumptions. And again, I always sort of go to this sort of analogy, but if somebody walks in with a, a $2,000 tailored suit, you're going to make assumptions on that person. You're probably going to think that they're successful. And by virtue of that, you're probably going to think they're intelligent. And that might be the furthest thing from the truth, but presentation matters. And to the extent that you are presenting this, the sort of maybe not as dramatic, but the resume in and of itself is your $2,000 suit, or at least it's representative of who you are. Or at the very least, they'll make assumptions based on how you present your information, right? So the idea is that it should resemble a style that is representative of you and that puts you in the most flattering light. But I will also say there are templates for resumes that I would absolutely use, rather than sort of, and again, the consultant I was talking to just sort of put it on the Word doc, and it was pretty basic. And needless to say, he wasn't getting many bites on his resume. But again, maybe we can have a discussion about that a little later on. But if you go to the next slide, Ricardo, sorry. Yeah, you can see what a data science resume looks like. You can see the technical skills, experience, projects.
I would say 0, because you are like bringing something important, which is true. A lot of the first filter is not a human, right? It's like a computer checking your technical skills. That's why the technical skills or the skills are important on your resume, because a lot of the skills will match the keywords that you have on the job posting. So that is important. And we haven't heard about, like, this is just template. We have different templates. This is not my favorite one, but we have different ones. From this, we haven't heard anything bad about not being tracked with the student that had sent this one, right? That might change because I know that different companies have different systems, right? But I think it is important to put the skills. One thing that is super, let's say, a bit annoying, but with tools like ChatGPT helps a lot, is when you are trying to apply for a job posting, right? And you have the skills there, change your skills every time that you send a different CV, right? So you can see that you can have that match of skills on your CV that you're sending to that company. So that is important that you change those skills, trying to match those keywords on the job posting. And for the other stuff, let's say like the real experience or the projects. Well, the projects, I think, for example, for Bryce, like she has a lot, like 12 projects, then she might want to change, right? Because she has different projects, she might want to change and put 2 or 3 projects that are more relevant to that job posting. But because, for example, when I was applying for jobs, I only have 5 different projects on GitHub. And what I did is I put 3, and sometimes I change it, but a lot of the times I didn't change it. I just reword stuff or try to put something that it was on the job posting. That worked for me a little bit. I will tell you a bit more after the real project. But it's good to keep that in mind. But at the end, think about what Alex is saying. If you pass the first filter, most possibly that someone is going to check your CV, right? And if someone is checking your CV, it needs to be, order, like it needs to follow some order and some style. Because if it's not just text, it's not gonna help you, right? It's just gonna say like, okay, this guy is just trying to get ahead the first filter, and it's not really going to help you for getting hired. So it does need to be a balance. Keep in mind that even though that there is like this first filter, a lot of hiring managers still want to see the CV and will read them. So this also needs to be, hiring manager friendly, human friendly.
Do we have an example template to give out? I'm not sure that we do. Sarah was asking.
I don't think so, but I think, well, the thing is that we can do, this is gonna be uploaded to YouTube, right?
Yes.
Yes, it's gonna be uploaded to YouTube to the WeCloud channel, so you can look it there. I don't think we have it right now, sorry, Zero, but I will try to maybe have it on the YouTube channel and we figure it out something.
Okay. So we talked about sort of the real client projects in general. Now we sort of like to focus on two specific projects, just to sort of give you a window into some of the projects that we have engaged with and are engaging with. In this case, this project was that that real client project I had alluded to that I didn't want to have anything to do with, largely because I hadn't had an opportunity to work with recommender systems at the time. And thankfully, however, the project managers sort of onboarded me in with that understanding and gave me the materials in which to follow up on, such that, you know, it didn't seem like I was punching too far above my weight class, if that makes sense. But in this particular project, what we were doing was, and again, what we're always doing as data scientists is we're solving business problems. That's it. So we can get lost in technical objectives and jargon, but at the end of the day, you're going to be engaging with stockholders to solve business problems. And in this particular business problem, we wanted to, for this media publisher, we wanted to increase user engagement via a recommender system. So I'm sure everyone by now has had an opportunity to experience in one version or another a recommender system, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Netflix, recommending you whatever movie you're most likely to like, or going on to Amazon and saying people who bought this product usually buy that. More and more companies have had tried to leverage recommender systems because the idea behind that is if you are on their site more, it's ultimately to their benefit for, you know, if you're on Amazon longer, probably going to buy more product. If you're on Netflix longer, you're probably going to be engaged in movies longer. And to the extent that you're engaging with their product, you're not engaging with anybody else's. And then, but generally, it provides a level of personalization for you specifically, which is ultimately hopefully anyway, increases user satisfaction, and a happy customer is a lifelong customer. So for this particular project, again, it was a major media publisher. They wanted to increase user engagement for their online articles. And if we can just go to the next slide. The recommender systems would allow that. So one of the things that we wanted to do was, one, improve the click-through rate. The second aspect was the model, so sort of defining the objective. Then we wanted to engage in model development via content and user similarity. These are two types of recommender systems. And then finally, what we would do was test out these recommender systems through A/B testing. Next slide, please. I just wanted to give you a little insight into the data pipeline that we were using, and one that ultimately leverages big data, because you can imagine with a fairly large reader base and a reader base that is a single reader who is engaging with many articles, the whole infrastructure needs to be supported with something that can allow for the size of the data. So what would ultimately happen is you'd go on to their website, and you would click on to an article. that article would go into the that article would be then compared against all the other articles that you'd read, and you'd be looking for a sort of similarity score. And then it would bring back for that particular user the, say, 5 closest articles in this particular case. Next slide. Just, I guess, a little brief introduction to the types of recommender systems, and two of which we were sort of going back and forth between and testing out. One is the collaborative filtering and recommender system, and one of the content-based filtering. So the collaborative system is essentially it depends on your sort of a network of associations. So if me and Ricardo have both watched, let's just say, a movie, I always use The Godfather as an example. So if me and Ricardo have both watched The Godfather, and Ricardo has watched The Godfather 2, based on that sort of association, it's likely that because we both liked Godfather 1, Ricardo liked Godfather 2, that I would be recommended Godfather 2 to watch. And then in content-based filtering, it's a little bit more individualistic in that it's if I'm watching The Godfather, then we would take a look at the similarities of The Godfather to other movies and base it on their content, right? So like, oh, okay, maybe he likes Pacino and Scorsese movies, or sorry, Pacino and the director, Christopher Coppola movies. So then they would give me something like, you know, anything in the realm of Al Pacino in the 1970s, which would be a good guess. But yeah, those are the types of collaborative filtering, both of which come with their own set of problems and advantages, frankly. But we were working and experimenting between the two types of recommender systems there. If you want to just click the next. Ultimately, this is just to show you how much data we were dealing with, and the need to leverage big data tools like Databricks, AWS, and PySpark. Again, and with the size of that data, that also brings up one of the challenges of the data is sort of dealing with that amount. Another one was interesting, the role of novelty and long-term engagement. So with whatever recommender system we were working with, and I think we ultimately settled on the content-based filtering. One of the challenges we had to navigate was the degree to which, well, at what point can we introduce new material? Because again, if all I'm being recommended is movies that are similar to the first 10 or 100 movies that I've watched, I might get bored, or I might get to the end of that, and you then have to introduce an aspect of novelty to say, oh, maybe you'll like this, and sort of open my eyes to something new. So that was definitely an issue that we had to look at. Another issue is data sparsity. And I mentioned that this issue presents itself with both content and collaborative based filtering, but for two different reasons. So what does data sparsity mean? Well, if I go on to, say, take collaborative filtering and I join this sort of network, but I haven't engaged with any one or like Ricardo or any particular items, then it's really hard to recommend me something because that collaborative filtering depends on that sort of network and community that you're in. And insofar as it's called the cold start problem. Insofar as it's day one for me, I'm like, well, what are we going to recommend them? I don't know. But that cold start problem is also there with the content-based filtering because, again, if I go onto this site, say a movie site, say Netflix, and I haven't engaged with any movies to date, well, what do we recommend them? So that's always a problem. The other issue, and I guess one of the major issues that you find with recommender system is the difference between implicit and explicit user feedback. So how do we know that I liked something? Well, ideally, I would have given it a like, a thumbs up, maybe left a review, and it would sort of be unequivocal. Wow, you liked it, gave it a thumbs up. That's the best kind of data. And that's the data that you want in order to provide recommendations, because clearly you have engaged with that data, you like that data, and then we can know to recommend more items that are similar to that. The problem with that is there's not enough of it because fewer people are likely to just sort of provide that feedback, to provide that rating, to provide that like. So what we're at the end of the day left with is what they call implicit data. And implicit data is, well, we got to sort of, in some sense, be creative to figure out or like that you liked it. So what does that mean? Well, you watch the movie to the end. All right. Well, I think we can safely say that they liked it. But we can always never be too sure, right? Because maybe you just put the movie on in the background and then you walked away and whatever it played. So that's the problematic aspect of implicit data. The only thing is it's so plentiful too, though. Like there's so much of it, but it's hard to rely on it. Explicit data, there's so little of it, but we'd love to rely on it. But these are some of the challenges of recommendation systems. Does anybody have any questions with that? In that case, I will turn it over to Ricardo, who will go over time series forecasting.
All right. Yep. So I'm going to start with the time series forecasting. This is the project that we just recently did with 5 other team members. And well, let me go to the next one. So this in particular, because of the NDA, I cannot show you the real data, but this is there is some publicly available information in Austin that is really similar to what the project was. In this case, it was electrical bikes and how they're going to be used around the city and how you can try to have dynamic pricing on it, right? So that way, if you have more demand, it's going to be more expensive to use, right? So this in particular is just checking the number of trips in each zone on the city. As you can see, which ones are the most popular or where more people are using those bikes. And first, like a lot of projects on data science, you need to do EDA, right? And try to understand what are the trends that you have on your data, right? In this case, if you have number of trips and by year and by month, right? And as you can see, you have like this, let's say summer peaks that you can see in each year. And you can also see here clearly, right, what happened in 2020. No one was outside. So this is what you normally do in this type of project. You try to understand trends before. But yeah, that's what we did in this project. Well, you just the step-by-step analysis, we do analyze the historical data. We try to identify best models to get the seasonality on it, and devise a methodology to increase or decrease pricing, right? I'm gonna go quickly through those. So this is a model that we try to use, and this is how we try to use it. But however, you can see that when you are working with seasonal models, you try to use complete year, right? In this case, when we try to use just this part of the year, it wasn't enough and it creates problems, right? So that's things that you need to try to, let's say, keep in mind when you're trying to use the models, is try to fit train data the whole year, right? Because that way you will see the seasonality of the year. It's not always available for some other projects. We only have 8 months of data, so it's not like you can get seasonality on the year, but at least you can get some seasonality on the days or the weekdays or things like that, right? This is a, let's say, like the table or the final table that we got from that project. It's just, I just wanted to show you because that way you will see that when you're working on a real client project, it's not only about the model itself, it's getting the data, right? Getting the data from the customer in a way that you can use and put the model to work on, right? So a lot of it in the first weeks when we are working with a client is understanding the problem. That's super important because sometimes they have another thing in their mind. So that's why communication skills are super important. You need to keep asking them a lot of stuff until they understand the limitation of what the model can do. And also you can understand what is a business problem. In this case, for example, they wanted to do the same, but they didn't have enough data from parts of their cities. So we have to try to, let's say, get the most data that we could get from there. And this is, and at the end, we need a table, like tabular data to do the model that we wanted to do in this case. There's other that we don't need that. But in this particular scenario, we did need that. And for example, after that, what we did is that we connected. So we did now, this is an example, it's not the real data, but in this one is Austin, right? So for the day of the week, at the hour and everything, we connected to a weather API, so we will create more features for the model, right? Because here we were talking about electrical bikes, so we assume that the weather could affect a lot of the demand, right? So we try to create more features to the model, so we could have a bigger data set, enriching the data that we already have. This is some of the prediction that we got and all the models that we try to do it. The root mean square logarithm error that you can see here from different models that we try in this particular case. And here have feature importance. For example, if we're thinking about is the weather important? Yes, temperature has some importance on it. The wind speed also, how it feels is also that important. But the most important stuff was where if it started in one of the most popular areas, the hour, the year, and the weekday, right? So there's time stuff, it was more important than the weather. One other important I wanted to talk about this particular project is that it's not only about the model, right? You do the model and then you have a prediction, right? So in this case, we were predicting demand, right? And let's say that you are predicting demand for the next day to be 100. 100 persons are gonna be looking for a bike in that particular area, right? But then it's like, okay, what do you do with that? It's not like the business problem is not demand. The business problem is how to price that, right? So in this case, we need to go, or we needed to ask them for more information about the price elasticity, right? Like if they have 10 people more, how much they will want to increase the price, right? Because if you increase the price too much, then even if you have people interested in doing a bike or riding a bike, it's gonna be so much expensive that they not gonna take it because they just walk or take the public transportation or take an Uber or whatever, right? So the company needs to have extra data, right? In this case, it was their price elasticity, how much they could go up without affecting demand too much, that people will keep using their service, right? In this case, the company did have that information, so we can calculate how much demand you how demand will be affected with the increase of pricing. So we at the end it's like just is how many sales they have at the total, right? So that's what we were trying to do. It was not just the machine learning model, it's also the business part that you need to take in consideration, because without it, your prediction doesn't add any value to it, right? So that was about the project. It's a time series analysis. You take the demand for the 3, 4 years or whatever information that you have, you analyze it. EDA is super important, so to always try to see the trends that you have on your own analysis, and then you start testing all your models. And then at the end, always keep in mind during the whole process, what is the end thing, right? In this case, we were not trying to get demand. Well, demand was important, but the more important stuff was the price, right? And for the price, we need to have this price elasticity stuff. So that's just the whole thing about this project. I don't know if you have any questions about it. Well, and in some cases, we didn't have the whole year. We only have 8 months.
Well, I guess we can go into some of the other projects that we're doing. I know I can speak to chatbot development, because since that seems to be the main project I keep managing, largely because everybody's interested in developing a chatbot. Everybody these days is interested in leveraging the power of large language models and natural language processing, and chatbots are a wonderful way to increase customer satisfaction and user engagement, because if you can have that on your website and use it to have customers ask questions that can be immediately answered through, like, some part customer service and some part through just frequently asked questions, it ultimately makes for a happier customer. Lone default, did you do, Ricardo? Were you doing
Yeah, non-default prediction. That's a good example of an imbalance label, right? Because we work with a company who was trying to identify who was going to be defaulting from their loan. So a lot of their data was imbalanced, right? Because the great majority of people, they pay their loan in time. It's just a minority that doesn't pay, right? And this was a good example of imbalance label and how to deal with that. But it's also important to consider here, like, there is a lot of regulation when you talk about laws and financial stuff. The model needs to be super transparent, right? So when you do the feature importance, it needs to be super clear what is the model is taking into consideration. There are some features that you cannot take into consideration, right? Because it's illegal. They cannot use that model to stop, giving a loan to someone, right? So that was a good example. And also, like, when you're doing a model, you have to take into consideration the industry you're working on and how the legal part of it can affect it. And yeah, that's it. And did you do the inventory one?
I didn't do the inventory for time series forecasting, but it works, I guess, something along the lines of what you would articulated just a little earlier. But I will say, for the website CEO, we're actually working on a project right now using large language models and how they might optimize SEO, search engine optimization performance, so that ultimately your website could rank higher in Google's rankings, which is absolutely pivotal for your business's bottom line, because it's something where the first page of the Google rankings, to that, I think 90% of the business goes. So it's extremely competitive, but extremely important just the same to have your website rank as highly as it can. And now there are so many ways in which large language models can assist in doing that. One of the projects now has, again, for a major media publisher, exploring ways in which to do that.
And for the last one, that one I did. This one was really important and I think simple. And I think that's also like a way to show you how easy a model can be and how much it can help. Because for the holiday stuff, it was a healthcare organization. They were trying to see how many resources they needed for the holidays, right? And one super important question was just, okay, is that particular clinic is going to be open or not during the holiday, right? And the problem is that communication on the healthcare is super broken, right? It's really hard to get a clear answer. Sometimes they don't really tell you if they are going to be open or not, things like that. So we just use like a machine learning model for the last 10 years for when a clinic is going to be open or not. And that helps them a lot because that way they will be able to see or to plan ahead, like how many doctors and nurses or whatever they need to make the clinic work, right? So that's was really a quick project that we work on, and it didn't take too much time and really helped them. So there is like also like quick, let's say like quick application that you could use on the machine learning stuff that you can help a lot the business. And that's it. Any questions? So I just wanted to go before we move to someone else. I wanted to answer Bri, sorry. I don't know how to pronounce the name, but because I know that she has been applying a lot, and I think this is a recommendation for everyone. Sorry, I'm just sending my personal portfolio through the chat. It's not like that good or anything, but I just wanted to show you what I did for myself. But the thing that I think if because I feel really identified with Prairie because I had also like a certification and I have like 5 projects and I sent like 100 applications and it was really hard to get interviews. But the thing that really changed a lot of stuff was getting more networking, and I know it's super annoying when they say that, but networking is just trying to contact people. Like for example, being here, that is already networking, right? Trying to get people or know people. Why I'm saying this? Because like 2-3 years ago, not it was not data related, but it was another job that I got after sending a lot of CVs. I got an interview with Amazon, and the only reason I got this interview or that opportunity it was because I started asking people, and it was someone from the school that I talked with them like 2 years ago, and I connected with them again, and he had some connection on Amazon, and that's why I got the interview on it. I didn't get the job, but at least I get the interview. And after 2 or 3 months more about searching for jobs, I got the job as a data analyst in the agency. So what I wanted to tell you is like, if you already have, because one important thing that you need to do is that you need to have the projects and you need to have for example, what she's doing, the Medium stuff, that's great because that's a lot of personal branding that you're showing that you have this authority, right? So that's super important. But if you are not like expanding your network, your own personal branding is gonna stay just with few people, right? It's not gonna expand. So if you already have all of that, you have your certifications and you have all your projects, what I would say is try to reach more persons. Just try to and it doesn't need to be like super. For example, I just spoke with some people on LinkedIn, and they just were just asking me and what did they study before and things like that, and I was happy to just answer them and told them what I did before. And I think it's important when you start doing that because you never know who is going to have an opportunity. So just try to keep expanding your network because if you already have all of that, you're really close to to have more opportunities. It's just about having more connections and more people, because it's always super important. It's more valuable when you know someone, then it's easier to get the interview. It might not get you the job, but at least it's gonna get you the interview. I just want to say that. And if you, the other thing I will say is that if you already apply 100 times, something like that, and you're not getting interviews, you keep applying, but not that much. Like, don't over focus on that because it's not giving you results, right? Try to do the networking more so you can get more exposure in other ways. But yeah, that's what I wanted to say because I think it really is important right now where the job market is harder.
Anna is also asking what master's specialization should a data scientist or data analyst consider doing? It's a difficult question to answer because I guess it largely based on your career goals and interests, but offhand and given just the trends in the way of the world, I would say anything AI. Seems to be I can't imagine the AI moment ending anywhere in the short-term future.
I will also say, answering Anna question, I have seen a lot of career changing persons on the data stuff. They normally come from STEM. I will say like I think something super specific, which they go like really to machine learning, master in machine learning. But I also seen some people with MBAs. I see some people with um, mathematics degrees. So like if you really want just to improve your education, that you cannot go wrong with a master in machine learning. But I will also say like because the job is so tough right now, the job market is so tough right now, like getting those job experience, I'll say that that's more important right now than getting a master degree. Because what Alex said before also is like if you can show that you have real client experience, because that also will provide you a lot of confidence when you are on the interviews, because you did that job or you did a project that really had an impact somewhere. So that will help you a lot on interviews and things like that. It's just like I cannot tell you like this is like an statistical analysis. It's just anecdotal experience that I have from the, let's say, a year and a half. I've been 1.5, 2 years that I've been here, and that I have seen a lot of people getting jobs. On the last 3, 4 months, I have seen around 10, 15 people that I know that they got gotten a job, and the reason is that like real job experience that they have that, and that they try to make those connections.
Yeah, it's also going to be it's going to be very interesting where the next couple of years leads us, because I do believe, and this is just my opinion, but I do believe we are on the precipice of something entirely transformational. And I don't just mean that to like for the data science space or for the technology space. I think the technology that is emerging now is a civilizational game changer, in that it will, within a couple of years, so fundamentally alter our society as we know it that we will have to rethink how we structure it after everything is said and done. And that'll be largely spearheaded. Those changes are largely spearheaded by the technical advancements in AI. So that wasn't meant as like a sort of like, I wouldn't take that as a sort of dire prediction, because it could be,
The
it
end
could
of
be
the world.
quite remarkable at the same time. It's just, it's such a game changer. And it will impact every facet of society. And it's really, I mean, it's remarkable to see that there's AI lawyers being developed. And you know, like with that, like, oh, well, certainly the legal profession, they're, you know, there's still going to be human lawyers, but maybe not. How can you compete with an AI that could like reference a case precedent in less than a tenth of a second and articulate a wonderfully formed argument? It's crazy.
King has a question. I'm new to data science. What level of math? Okay. Yeah, well, normally you use a lot of libraries to do the heavy lifting. But the problem with using libraries, right, is that you can get lost if you don't have the knowledge or the knowledge, yeah, like the theoretical knowledge, right? Because for example, one mistake that we see a lot with new students, something like that, is that they are, let's say, they don't split the data, right? So they are doing the prediction with the same training data, right? So they have perfect scores or things like that. So if you don't understand why you are doing the stuff that you're doing with the library that you are using, it can get messy pretty quickly, right? So I would say like try to do like oh, of course if you have the time, go deep in understanding all the stuff. But if you want to move a bit quicker, it's always good to, just work on a project. You can find in Kaggle any project, work on it, try to see if you understand everything that you're doing. If not, go back and go back to the theory, try to understand that, and just do it that way. Like just, let's say, trying to balance both and keep learning that way. Because also, like, if you don't try to use the theoretical knowledge that you already have, then is you're not gonna see what are the let's say missing components when you're trying to use it on a real life problem.
I think also to Akin's question, the libraries are very effective at implementing the math in some cases. But that said, you still might need to have solid understanding of when and why and what is happening with that implementation. But that said, it depends also on what level of data science professional you're going to be. So if you are looking to, I would only look to immerse myself in like the theory, the research, with and those roles that are basically advertised within Silicon Valley sort of require a deep level of understanding and engagement with all these principles, because you are in some sense developing new models and but that's for like sort of like the PhD research component data scientist. But for a practical, or as we call it, an operational data scientist, I don't know that you need to know math that well. I think that's fair to say, Ricardo. Like you have to know what, I mean, you have to know the sort of solid principles, but in terms of like,
Yeah, like I think what you're
concept.
saying, it makes a lot of sense. It depends on the problem on the job that you're looking. Like of course, if you are doing a new model and from zero, from scratch, you probably need a lot of math, right? But if you're using all the libraries that we already have, you will need like probably statistical knowledge, probabilistic knowledge, But I don't think that like you need to do manual all the things that you're doing on the library, right? It's just that you need to understand the foundations and see that they make sense for what you're doing. But I don't think you need to go super deep on it. Depends on
Yeah.
what you're doing. I think seriously is something important. And I think another idea to do networking. Um, which is just like, to be honest, that's another idea. Just we have Discord server chat when people talk all the time, but it's not only off, right? There's a lot of it, of data related stuff where you can work on it. Uh, so yeah, like that's a good idea. Just work on a project with other people. Because sometimes, for example, when I'm working with new students, sometimes they don't know how to use GitHub, just GitHub, how to push stuff, pull stuff, and commit stuff, things like that, right? And that's super useful, and I don't think we put too much importance on it. And when you start working with other people, you see that, right? And also, I think reading code from other people helps you out to learn other stuff, right? So working with other people in the same project, that's also super great way to do networking. Other thing that I want to say is that when you are working on a real client project, because for example, let's say on my portfolio, you can see that I have some loan thing, right? You see my code and everything, but um, the data that you have there is available data, right? It's public data from Kaggle, who is already clean and everything. When you work with a real client project, you don't have that in a lot of times. You need to clean the data, you need to find where the data is, you need to gather the data. And all of those skills are also important. And you could discuss that it's not a data science job to do all of that because a data engineer should give you all the information clean and ready for you. But that's not the real life. In real life, the data scientist is the one who do a lot of it uh, to try to do the model, right? So that's also a good thing about the real client project is that you will have to do that. And it's also super important. And it will also show a lot on your CV that you already are working with business problems. And that's important. And feel free to reach me on LinkedIn if you have questions after the meeting. Me or Alex, we are there. Uh, so anything you need, you don't need to, to be on WeCloud or anything for general questions, we can help you out. Not a big deal.
Hmm. Funniest
Right.
thing, please comment. And one opportunity, but I had imposter syndrome back then. And we all, don't we all, to some extent?
Yeah, I think it's in this job, imposter syndrome is something that is always on the back of your mind. Really hard to get out of it
Yeah.
because you are like with new problems all the time. You don't know if you are doing the right thing. I think also that where community is important. Talk with other people, see that what you're doing makes sense. Also, that helps a lot, at least for me.
Yeah, new problems all the time. And it seems like there's just an endless number of things to learn. Or always new things to learn
Yeah.
anyway. Um,
Well, it always depends on what you want to do, Anna. It is good to have experience. Like, of course, it's good. Um, it depends how fast you want to get a job, right? Because getting for example, without a real client project, it requires that at least a 3 month, 3 month that you don't, probably you're not going to be focused on, or at least you're not going to be as focused to find a job, right? You're going to try to work with the real client project. So it depends also on your person, like in your personal situation, right? But yes, in short, yes, having real client projects is important. It can help you to get um job job interviews.
I think it's key. I think it's key. In answer to your question, Anna, what companies would you search to get to basically, I think we're talking about an internship here. I'm not sure. I haven't looked for those directly, but I would imagine those could be identified on job sites like Indeed or LinkedIn. But essentially, you're, I guess, looking for an internship where you can trade off your time for the experience that that company would provide. But I obviously just have a look at the real client data project from WeCloud. I think personally, I just think it's irrespective of the fact that I'm working for Beam, but and if not Beam, then some other entity that can provide you the opportunity to work in these real client settings. I just think it's invaluable. And I think it's funny, going through the boot camp, they kept saying you're going to learn a lot in the boot camp, and but you'll ultimately learn more in the real client projects. Which is unfortunate because there's a lot to learn in the boot camp. But I think in some ways that was true, because and something I actually am grateful for the boot camp. It so much coming at you for the data science boot camp anyway, or for me, that it really develops a greater skill in terms of how to think fast, on your feet, problem solve, adjust, and take in new information in short periods of time. With that sort of skill solidified or calcified, you can take that and apply that to the real client projects, because in often cases, as Ricardo was alluding to, it's something new. Here's a new problem. Okay, how do I approach it, and how do I approach it quick? But again, even just having that professional experience to engage with your mental faculties in that way is, I think, tremendously beneficial. Bree says, how do you remember all of the information? I don't. I don't. I have to reference things on a continual basis. There's just so
Yeah.
much.
A year ago, I remember a year ago, I had a project on PySpark, and I had to learn all the syntax of PySpark and everything. And I finished the project, and everything went good. If you ask me today to do something on PySpark, I don't remember like one thing of the syntax. I will need to see documentation again. I will need to do ChatGPT. I will need to check everything again. It's just, I guess, what your project is right now, and focus on that and being good at that. And I guess with time, it also, you start remembering what you did in the past, and you get better at trying to catch up. But yeah, don't think at least for me, I don't remember stuff. It's just I try to focus what I need to do right now.
Yeah, I think again it speaks to those greater problem solving skills I was talking about. Like, oh, okay, how do I get this? How do I make this work? Connect enough dots, research this, implement it, and then yeah, oftentimes, you'll return to a project and go, did I have no idea how I did that.
Well, any other questions, guys? Can be about the project, can be job hunting, any other question?
I will say just one last thing because I always want to touch on it, and on the topic of like job hunting. And if you are fortunate enough to find yourself in the interview process, it's something that I can't overstate enough, and something that I've largely because I think it's underdeveloped. It's one of the most underdeveloped skills in the industry, and that's the soft skill of communication. Your ability to communicate ideas clearly, effectively, and concisely, and engagingly, will have a tremendous impact on you getting the job, on your advancement in your career. And I can't state that enough. I've seen students from the bootcamp who were consultants on the real client projects ultimately find jobs well before I would even say more capable consultants had, largely because they knew how to communicate. You'd be amazed because again, when you can communicate, you can put forward your ideas, people will understand them, and pathways will absolutely open up. And again, I think it's underdeveloped because we're generally working in isolated circumstances in front of our computers, largely confined to maybe a couple of emails here and there, but little opportunity for extended conversations, and certainly presentations that one will need to make. And again, you're always sort of presenting, as far as I'm concerned, in the interview to stakeholder, you're presenting a story, whether it's yours or the story of what can be done with this business problem. Your ability to connect with those individuals will, you wouldn't even believe how beneficial that will be. Yeah, public speaking class. It's funny too, right? Because when you explain something in tech, and this is one of the reasons why it's very underdeveloped. There's a lot of technically inclined people when engaging with stockholders, too mired in technical speak, largely because that's what you're speaking to your colleagues throughout the days. But it's actually not even a point of interest in to stakeholders. They don't know what the XGBoost algorithm does or why you optimized it with like hyperparameter tuning using grid search. It's like, okay, well, does it save me money? Yeah. Oh, okay. Tell me how to save. Like, now I have it. Now you have my attention. So that's also part of it, like catering your speech to whoever is in the room and connecting with them in a meaningful and engaging way. I will say also, just in the having had the opportunity to sort of like run some mock interviews, a genuine, authentic personality in the room goes an incredibly long way too, because largely, and sort of was my experience, that most people come in never really connecting to the person that's interviewing them because they're so preoccupied and focused on repeating the perfect answer that they've practiced in their bedroom, never even allowing for a disruption or an interruption in the course of that answer. And when interrupted, it sort of like just flies over them or, stops them in their tracks. But the degree to which you're doing that is the degree to which you're not present. And the degree to which you're not present is the degree to which you are not connecting with anybody. And I think people that it comes at your detriment because it's all about, at the end of the day, making a connection. Because especially for interviews, because when you leave that room, I think you want them to go, huh, yeah, hey, nice person, or seems really competent. That was funny, or whatever. But the minute same as the 400 other people I've seen, doesn't matter. Like no real impression, no real rapport developed. I think that no real chance. That's a good question. How much? How do we answer how much are you expecting? And we always ask this question in the mock interviews, largely because we wanted to see how people would react to it. And in some sense, all the questions that get asked in the behavioral questions, maybe just as important or more is how you behave in answering them. So I can say one thing, but if I'm behaving another way, it's that's, I guess, more indicative and truthful of how I feel about that particular question. The one thing I would suggest, two things. One, research what a baseline salary is for somebody in your position and in the job you're applying for. And that's generally a range. And you want to know that range. And based on your set of experience, education, etc., you want to know where you fit into that range, or leave it as, that as broad as the range seems, and, open it up to certainly, a larger conversation and about, the particulars. But so one, know the range, because we asked that question, and when you undervalue or aren't aware of what the range is and you undervalue yourself, it feels like you haven't done the legwork necessary. It feels like you're too new to the industry, that you would lowball yourself, that you wouldn't have an accurate conception what the average salary range is. And at the same time, you don't want to over your values yourself so much that, you're on another planet and everyone has to do a double take. But just as importantly, when you say that, it has to be said like you think you are worth that salary at the very least. Like you'd have the confidence, be, I don't want to say unapologetic, but you would know your worth and what you bring to the company, such that you can say, I'm expecting, X amount of money. I think that's keeping them in the sort of market value. And and knowing what you bring to that position, I think it has to be said with confidence, or you have to be very comfortable in answering that question, because the discomfort also reads. your lack of confidence also reads. Because if you say, maybe I guess the 85,000, it doesn't give me assurance that you feel like, I'm like, oh, it doesn't give me any assurance that you think you are worth it. And it doesn't give me any assurance that you think that you can actually do the job on the same level as anybody else who would come in and say, I'm $85,000. So Anna's asking, are there any data job opportunities at WeCloudData? Ricardo, are there? I'm not
I
aware.
don't think we have anything right now. Like, I'm also not the hiring manager, but I think right now we are full. So sorry, and I don't think we have right now.
Are there any other questions in the waning moments? Are all of you pretty much looking at are you looking at data science positions or data analyst positions? Or either, or both? Oh, DevOps roles, free. You're that's pretty hardcore too. So do you have some engineering background? We had a DevOps program. Don't know that we're still running that. That's an interesting strategy, actually. We had a consultant just recently get and I'm sort of speaking to Sil's approach. She's looking for a data analytics position since she says her understanding is that it's more of an entry-level position, easier to sort of break into. That might be the case, because a lot of the consultants have started out in data analytics and with the hope and in some cases pivoted to openings within the data science space within that particular company. And I was just interacting with one of the consultants who became the senior data analyst for a telecommunications company with the thought that they would ground themselves in that company and then pivot towards data science. So it's not a bad strategy and one that I think is taken quite a bit.
And about the certification, it's hard to tell you about certification because some companies don't really care about it, some others do. Um, so I will always give you more preference on having a real client project. If you cannot get a real client project, then a project, having your projects, personal projects, at least with some difference, right? So if you are looking for data analytics jobs, like a dashboard, like some EDA, like have different stuff on your project. Um, if you have that and still you want to do it, then fine, right? It depends also on your time that you have. Um, but just like certifications can be important, but I wouldn't put that as a priority.
Sorry, I just wanted to touch on the thought that from Bree. Bree has like the 10, 12 projects, and that's great. And insofar as you undertook those efforts and developed the skills and the familiarity with all those aspects around the projects are only going to benefit you. I think sometimes, though, why they are not considered as valuable as certainly they may have proven to you is because I think what hiring managers were figuring out was that you could essentially go to Kaggle and take one of the notebooks there, make some slight adjustments, and call it your project and present it there. So there wasn't a lot of, it was hard to sort of check the, I guess, the integrity of that individual's project because you do, in some cases you do see like oh, you did this project, you did this project, you did the very same and the very same and the very same project. But that said, I still say you should absolutely interact with them because again, you learn by doing, and doing is only going to benefit you. And by familiarizing you with those concepts, does it translate so much in terms of providing you greater job opportunities? Maybe not as much, but maybe if you're able to present those projects in a unique and compelling way, like by directing people to your portfolio, it at least portfolio site, like you saw at Ricardo's, it at least gives people the indication that you are serious about curating a certain professional image, and that you have sort of undertaken the efforts to engage with the projects, yes, but aggregate them in such a way that you could sort of present them. That I think that always reads well, right? It's like it's better that the person have the portfolio project sort of the portfolio website than one who doesn't. I don't. But yeah, and it's also like taking it a step further than GitHub, because again, GitHub we can run into the same. It's easier to again take the Kaggle notebook and upload it on my GitHub. It's just I think entirely more presentable and professional to have a portfolio website.
All right, guys, I think I'm gonna stop recording.